We'd driven all day long. We thought we were going out to some casual attire, and they're all dressed up. And so my son-in-law says, would you like to go see the boathouse? Oh yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. So we walk in this boathouse and we see all these important people that spent $75 a ticket. They've got all this stuff. They've got ice sculptures. They have this one ice sculpture that this lady she's hanging from the rafters on a towel. Well, or a sheet or something. And you bring your drink up to her, and she pours it in this ice sculpture, and it goes down, and then they catch it, and it's now cool.
Oh, cool.
And this poor little thing is trying to balance herself on this sheet and pouring it in. And here we are. Hey, look at that, honey! Ain't that pretty? So my son-in-law said, would you like to go out and see the old boathouse? Yes, that's where we belong. We go out to the old boathouse. And as we come back into the facility from the old boathouse, I know that we must look very, very attractive. There's a lady that begins to look at us, and she's admiring us, I can tell. This lady, you should have heard the words she spoke with her eyes. She looked at Sue. Now, I'm sure she caught the glistening of the truffle glitter on her face. And then she looked her up, and she looked her down, and she looked her up, and she looked her down, and she had this. And Sue wanted to say, I agree with you. Have you ever had one of those dreams where you went to the wrong place, dressed at the wrong way?
Oh, yeah.
I've had that dream. This was no dream. This is reality. And I finally resolved the fact that we will never see these folks again the rest of our lives. And they, in their great joy, will never see us either. Now you wonder why I started off this sermon with this message. In Matthew 21st chapter, Jesus talks about the parable of the landowner. This landowner had a vineyard and he rented it out. And as he rented out this vineyard, he went to collect his portion of the vineyard profits. Normally in those days you had sharecroppers, and these sharecroppers would get their part and the owner would come and get his part. And when he sent his servants out to collect his portion, they beat him up. And he sent some more servants out and he beat them up. And they sent some more servants and they beat them up. And then he stoned the third. And in the 36th verse it says, and again he sent another group of slaves larger than the first, and they did the same to them. But afterwards he sent his son to them, saying, they will respect my son. But when the vine growers saw the son, they said among themselves, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him and seize the inheritance. And they took him and cast him into the vineyard and killed him. Therefore the owner of the vineyard comes. Therefore when the owner of the vineyard comes, what will be due to these vine growers? They said to him, he will bring these wretched to the wretched end, and will rent out the vineyard to other vine growers who will pay him the proceeds at the proper season. Jesus said to them, did you never read the scriptures? The stone which the builders rejected, this became the chief cornerstone. This came about from the Lord, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore I say to you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and be given to the nation, producing the fruit of it. And he who falls on this stone will be broken to pieces, but on whomever it falls, it will scatter them to dust. When the chief priests and the Pharisees heard this parable, they understood he was speaking of them. And they became afraid and began to seek out to kill him. What Jesus is talking about here, he's talking about the prophets had gone out and tried to share the word. And they didn't receive the word. And they began to do all kinds of different things. They beat them up, they killed them, they destroyed them. And then Jesus was sent by his own Father to come. And all they were going to do is kill him too. And then Jesus in the 22nd chapter talks about the marriage feast. And Jesus answered and spoke to them again in a parable. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son. And he sent out his slaves to call those who had been invited to the wedding feast, and they were unwilling to come. Again he sent out other slaves, saying, tell those who have been invited, behold, I have prepared my dinner, my oxen and my fattening livestock are all butchered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding feast. But they paid no attention. And they went their way, one to his own farm, another to his business. And the rest seized his slaves and ministered them and mistreated them and killed them. And the king was enraged, and he sent his armies out and destroyed them, those who had murdered and set their cities on fire. Then he said to the slaves, the wedding is ready, but those who are invited were not worthy. Go into the highways, and many, as you find there, invite them to the wedding feast. And those slaves went into the streets and gathered together all those who found, both evil and good. And the wedding hall was filled with dinner guests. And when the king came in, he looked over the dinner guests and saw a man not dressed in wedding clothes. And he said, friend, how did you come in here without wedding clothes? And he was speechless, and the king said to the servant, bind him head and foot, and cast him to the outer darkness, in a place where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, or few are chosen.